Hey guys, it's Walker Deibel, author of Buy Then Build and creator of the Acquisition Lab. Today we're going to talk about the two things that you need in order to close on the acquisition of your first business. The thing is that when you go to buy a company, especially for the very first time, there's the number one thing that sort of rules over that decision process and that experience, and that's uncertainty. In other words, what are the things that you don't know about the business? What are the things that you weren't able, to pull out during due diligence that are going to impact your decision later? I've heard it said that before closing, the buyer has all the money and none of the information, and the seller has none of the money and all the information. And then after the transaction, the buyer has none of the money, none of the information, and the seller has all the money and all of the information. It's not exactly accurate, but it's directionally true, right? Like, in other words, there's always this component where the buyer is having to take a risk, take a leap of faith in order to gain that courage to kind of make that leap of faith. And so there's really two things that are going to help, and two things that we need to kind of keep in check in order to do that. So hopefully by the end of this story, you'll have the tools that you need in order to move forward, or at least know what is normal and true and the things to be paying attention to. The first time I closed on a business, the second time I closed on a business, then it started to get easier. My heart was pounding with fear during those signatures. Like, I just remember having to breathe and be like, all right, this is a huge personal guarantee. When you're buying companies when you're young, you don't exactly have a lot to lose, and so you sort of are willing to take these significant personal guarantees in order to acquire your own business and own all the equity. Okay, and that's really what's worked for me. But the point is that it does get easier, but only because as you do it, you start to get more and more confident in your ability to actually buy a company and see it through to the end, right? In terms of what that strategy is that you want to do. And so the thing is the two things that you need to be paying attention to are, number one, persistence and the ability to pivot, and number two, self-belief. Okay, persistence and the ability to pivot. My daughter, my 8-year-old daughter, is so persistent that she definitely eats more cookies, more desserts, and watches more videos than her other sisters. Okay, she stays on you. She knows what she wants and she works to get it. Okay, so it's that persistence and that commitment to the goal and staying after what it is that you want. But in entrepreneurship, we like to say, I'm 100% committed until the world or the customers or the data explains to me that I need to change what I'm doing and accomplish that goal. Okay, so having that persistence towards the goal, that ability to pivot, is really a commitment towards getting it done. Okay, and the second is self-belief. And the question here is, do you believe in yourself? Do you really believe in yourself? Because this gets hard. Okay, and the thing is that when you have a high level of self-belief, anything is possible. And if you don't have that self-belief, if you don't believe that the world is malleable and that you're the one to solve this problem, you probably shouldn't go down this path. Okay, without it, you can't really achieve anything, and with it, anything can be achieved. Okay, so if you've got persistence in the ability to pivot and self-belief, these are the things that get you over the gate. Now, the things that we want to keep in check are also really, really important. Okay, and so fear, doubt, and uncertainty is always in these decisions in terms of acquiring a business, where the stakes are high. You're maybe putting out your whole net worth or beyond. And so the thing is we want to embrace and acknowledge fear of failure and doubt. Okay, both of these things can and should be confronted. Okay, they are immensely useful tools. But the thing is that a lot of times when I'm looking, especially at first-time buyers, they get stuck in the analysis. Okay, they get stuck in, they're really trying to explain to themselves why they shouldn't do it, right? Or they're trying to understand the business model of acquiring businesses and spending a lot of time in the spreadsheets and running numbers. And so the thing is that you need to acknowledge the fear of failure. You need to acknowledge doubt. You need to look at, where is this business possibly going to fail, and do I feel like I can navigate us through it? Okay, so embracing fear of failure and doubt into your thinking is critical to making good decisions. But if you don't incorporate them into making into helping you make, if you don't incorporate them into your decision process, what happens is that they end up ruling the decision process, and that fear of failure and that doubt will overcome and let you know that you have a low self-belief and that you cannot close on this business, okay? So keep that in mind. So a big part of closing deals is simply having, being able to take that leap of faith, and these are the tools that you need in order to do that. If you plan on buying a business in the next 12 months, please consider applying to the Acquisition Lab. We're a vetted group of buyers doing Do It With You buy-side advisory service. Please feel free to apply on acquisitionlab.com and get world-class education, group coaching, a suite of tools, and a vetted community to help you succeed in that first acquisition or in implementing a growth through acquisition process. Thanks a lot.